Why Your Mental Health Matters. Miltanja Greer, who will moderate our discussion, is a licensed clinical social worker at Atrium Health in Charlotte, a graduate of Winston-Salem State University. She earned her Master of Social Work from Johnson C. Smith University. Miltanja is dedicated to raising awareness about mental health issues, removing stigmas, and building gaps between the community and mental health providers. Joining her is Shamir Neal, a licensed clinical psychotherapist at Atrium Health. Shamir received her undergraduate degree from North Carolina A&T State University. All right. Hey. And her master's degree from Barry University. She provides individual and group therapy to help others reach their full potential by focusing on mental health and wellness. Shamir has partnered with organizations like the Carolina Panthers and Mecklenburg County, did I say that word? Mecklenburg County Department of Social Services to promote mental health. Please welcome Miltanja Greer and Shamir Neal to the stage.
Thank y'all for sitting in and hanging in there with us. I know you guys had a lot of information today about some great medical conditions and conditions that affect the Black community specifically. So I think that's where we're going to start our conversation. Shamir, what are some common symptoms and signs of mental and medical conditions that are interconnected? What are your thoughts on mental and medical being connected?
I think they're connected. When you take a look at it, your mental health can affect your physical health, and your physical health can affect your mental health, right? So let's take a look at depression. Depression can be something like sadness, hopelessness, but you can also see physical symptoms like stomach aches, headaches, anxiety. You can also see some physical symptoms with that, like racing heartbeat, loss of focus, etc. So it is possible that your physical health can affect your mental health and vice versa. I have a lot of clients who come into the office, they went to their primary care doctor, and their doctor is like, I see nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. And the patient is like, wait a minute, I'm having sleep disturbances, my appetite has changed, stomach aches, headaches, and the doctor is saying, I can't find anything. My recommendation will be more for a clinical psychologist or maybe a therapist. And at first they're like, no way, I'm feeling this pain. I know what it feels like. You have to run more tests. But they decide to go along with the recommendation, actually go to the therapist, and they find out that those physical symptoms is anxiety. So that's a big one. They can relate.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing Shamir say is basically when one goes unaddressed, the other is absolutely impacted. So taking care of your physical health is taking care of your mental health, and taking care of your mental health absolutely would improve your medical health. And sometimes, even though it can seem easier, addressing your medical health is not as easy as it seems. Shamir, from your perspective, what are some common barriers that people encounter that discourage them from going to seek mental health treatment? What creates a disconnect from our community going to actually see mental health providers?
I think one is the fear of saying, I am not okay, that there is something wrong, or thinking that I have to have a severe mental health disorder to see a therapist. But actually, to see us, you can have day-to-day life challenges, struggles, you can have problems with adjustment, marital counseling, you can have issues with school and bullying. It doesn't have to mean schizophrenia. It doesn't have to mean bipolar. It definitely means that you need some support, but I think that kind of stirs a lot of people away from it. Another one I would say is cost. Can I afford mental health care? A lot of people don't know that some therapists have a sliding scale fee. We take private insurance, and also a lot of companies have what we call EAP, which is Employment Assistance Program. You may have 5 to 6 or maybe 8 sessions of free mental health counseling that you're not aware of. So be sure to kind of ask, is this a part of my insurance plan? Also, I would say just being shameful or thinking that you're weak for seeking assistance, right? So when you think about being weak, if I was carrying 100 tons of weight, I would be so happy for someone to come and help me carry that other side of 100 tons, right? I would not say, please move. I would say, please help me carry this. Ooh, I'm so tired. I'm mentally being affected. I'm physically being affected by this 100 tons of weight that I'm carrying. But what if that is 100 tons of burdens, 100 tons of problems? I may not be as open to say, can you help me? But why am I weak in the second scenario, but I'm not weak in the first? So I think those are some common trends.
I would absolutely agree. And I know it's a tough decision to go see a mental health provider, but once someone does make that very vulnerable decision, how important is client matching, or what's the big deal about client matching with providers?
So, client matching, that's a great question. Client matching is very important because you want to feel comfortable, you want to feel relaxed with your therapist, you want the environment to feel like I can go there and tell this person about about my problems. However, you sometimes have clients who say, I want somebody who looks like me, meaning I want a female, I want a black therapist. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they can treat you. What if they don't have the credentials? What if they don't have the skills? What if they don't have the background? They may have the same cultural background, but that doesn't mean that they have the educational background that they need in order to meet your needs. I've had a lot of people to come into the office, and as soon as they see me, they say, it's not going to work because I don't look like them. But then they proceed to continue with services, and we become the best of friends. Not friends, but we have a therapeutic and client alliance together. And I'm able to help them with their presenting problems when at first they were like, she doesn't look like me, she can't understand my struggles, but we are able to match.
Absolutely. And like Shamir, I've had those similar experiences where someone might look at me and say, you too young to tell me what to do in my life.
Yes.
But I try to, make sure I keep everybody encouraged and let them know, hey, I've done the work. And if I cannot assist you, I'll be sure to make the right referral so you still get what you need. And with a lot of social media content being very popular, I think, how did y'all find out about the Black Health Matters event? Did you see it on social media? Right. Social media is very popular. So a lot of clients and providers are matched through social media. Not the best policy, but that's the first line of defense there sometimes. So, Shamir, what's your thoughts on social media and mental health?
Social media is a big one. I do think there are therapists out there on social media that can meet your needs. However, we have content creators, we have influencers, we have people giving advice and their testimony that do not have the background, who do not have the skills in order to support you. Now, I've got a lot of advice off of Facebook and also YouTube. I call it YouTube University. And my mom says, did you watch the news this morning? I'm like, no, I went to Facebook News and I got all I needed. So we sometimes use those resources to gain advice and support, like I said before. But you want to go a step further and make sure that these people have exactly what you need as far as the educational background to meet your needs. Also, with social media on the flip side, people use social media as their therapist. I know everything about everything by looking at social media. You got fired today, your son didn't make the basketball team, you're not feeling good, you didn't have a good hair day. So all of these things are on there and you're looking for people to respond, right? You're looking for people to say, I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to be there for you. If you need anything, let me know. But these people cannot be your therapist. They can be your community of supporters, absolutely. On the other side of that, everybody's living their best life on social media. I mean, everybody's rich, everybody's making money, everybody's happy, there's no problems, but we all know that's not reality. The reality is they may present well, however, at night, they may have some depression, anxiety, and they're really struggling, but on social media, it looks perfect. A lot of people won't even present themselves on social media if they're not to par, if they don't have on makeup, or if they don't have on special clothing, or whatever they feel like needs to happen to represent themselves well. So be careful about social media. It's a wonderful outlet, but just make sure that those people have the educational background that you need.
Absolutely, Shamir. That was a great answer. And I think, just a reminder, social media is a great tool for marketing and promotion, and just being a way to express yourself. But we also want to be mindful of how we use it. So think about that when you're putting things out there, what you get back because of what you put out there. So shifting gears a little bit, Shamir, I want to discuss something that's deeply embedded in the Black community. In your experience, how has the concept of resilience been viewed, and do you think that sometimes it can overshadow the need for proper mental health care? So, thinking about how strong we are and how we're told to keep going.
Yeah. So I think resilience sometimes in the Black community does overshadow the need for additional support. So when I think about resilience, I think about what does it take in order for you to be considered a strong Black woman? What does it take for you to be considered as a strong Black man? Does it mean that you have to overcome mistreatment, that you have to overcome burdens and barriers? Does it mean that you have to do all of these things in order to be considered strong? It's one of those things where it's okay to say you're not okay and to seek treatment, but a lot of people feel like I have to be resilient, I have to present well and continue to go in order to be considered strong.
Absolutely. I know many times I've been facing struggles and was told, you just got to keep going. And I'm like, yeah, but I need help, right?
Right.
And so it is okay to just keep going. But when you feel like you need additional support, don't feel any shame about having to reach out. That's what therapists are for. That's what psychiatrists are for. So utilize the resources when you need them.
I do want to say something else, Miltanja. Sometimes you can minimize other people's resilience. For example, let's say I've been married for 10 years and I got a divorce, and I'm so excited that I was able to overcome and become self-sufficient. And the next person can be like, 10 years, I went 20 years. And it's minimizing how that person feels and what they've been through and the fact that they do feel resilient. And we have to be careful, because a lot of times I see that where people feel like, especially like with abuse, I've been sexually abused, for example, a client would say, and then they would tell their parent or tell a guardian, and they would say, well, me too. So what now? That's really kind of diminishing how that person feels and their ability to possibly be resilient.
Absolutely. And that kind of segues into the concept or the discussion around generational traumas and how we pass those from generations to generations. What are your thoughts about generational trauma, or what can you share with us about that topic?
Generational trauma is absolutely 100% real. Let's break that down. Basically, it's trauma that has caused psychological and emotional effects from one generation to the next generation. Let's give an example of domestic violence. If you were a child in the home and you witnessed domestic violence and you saw how that person was treating your other parent, that's something that you can take with you. That's something that's going to affect you over time. Is that teaching you how to interact with your spouse or your partner? Is that teaching you how to communicate effectively? Is that shaping your ideas about what a relationship is supposed to be? So you take that trauma with you throughout your life. And then what? We have kids, and then we teach them the same thing, right? So that's a part of generational trauma. We have to be careful about what we're doing and what our kids see. It's a such thing as observational learning. We learn from what we observe, and a lot of times that's where generational trauma comes from.
Absolutely. And in many cultures, even myself, I was taught to pray about my struggles, right? So how does spirituality and mental health go together, or does it?
That's a touchy subject right there. Okay. It's real touchy.
Pray about
it. Pray about it. Well, I'll go, before I answer that question, let me go back to the resilience. In order to kind of, excuse the generational trauma, in order to address that, sometimes, listen to this, we have to unlearn unhealthy family patterns. Unlearn unhealthy patterns.
Now, Shamira, let me interject. Whose responsibility is that?
Yours.
Okay. Accountability.
Accountability. It starts with you doing a self-assessment. Where am I? Am I mimicking some of those behaviors? And I think that kind of wraps that up. But I just wanted to make sure that I point out sometimes we have to unlearn unhealthy patterns and recognize that it is unhealthy.
Absolutely. Shifting gears again to a more fun subject, self-care. The concept of self-care. I like to pride myself as the queen of self-care, right? But I was doing self-care wrong for a long time because I went to get my hair done. I went to get my nails done. I got a massage. I was doing self-care, right?
Not really.
Oh, what's the concept of self-care? What does that really look like, Shamir? I thought I was taking care of myself.
Well, getting your hair done and getting your nails done is technically a self-care, but if it's routine, if every 2 weeks you're going to an appointment, that's maintenance. That's not really self-care. It can be if you're sitting there and you're unwinding and you got your headphones on or you're having conversations in the nail shop, that's fine. But at some point, you have to be intentional about self-care and what that looks like. So you have to take time, hold yourself accountable, and also understand when you need it. A lot of times we'll schedule like a vacation 6 months from now when we know we need to go tomorrow. Matter of fact, today. But since we can't go today, because I can't go today, what can you do at home? What are you going to do with those 15 minutes that you have in the shower? Are you going to just be in there and just rush? Are you really going to enjoy the hot shower? Are you really going to enjoy that coffee? Are you really going to take time out to read maybe 15 minutes in a book? Are you going to take that walk? That's a part of self-care. So be careful of maintenance and self-care and being intentional. But I do want to go back to that spirituality question. I
Let's
feel
go.
like I went over that.
You didn't like that I prayed about it and didn't go to therapy?
I want you to pray about it. Yeah. I do feel like spirituality can impact someone's ability to reach out for treatment, right? So that's a touchy subject, and sometimes I don't like to answer that question. But I think that faith based and having a faith base, having belief and believing in a higher source is definitely important. I do it within my life and believe that change can happen through my faith. However, I think it's important to go a step forward with possibly seeking treatment because you need to learn steps. You need to learn skills. For example, you can pray about it, absolutely, and change could potentially happen, but you need to learn how to problem solve. What steps are you going to take to make it different? How are you going to learn various coping skills? It's important to learn different tools and interventions along with your faith as well.
Absolutely, because we all know faith without works is what? Dead. Okay.
There you go.
All right. So, lastly, Shamir, this whole conversation was surrounding why mental health actually matters, right? So, I want to ask you in your own words, why does mental health matter?
I think mental health matters for various reasons. However, when I think about it in totality, I think that mental health is a part of your overall well being. So, a lot of times we'll go to the doctor. We'll take the car to the car shop to get tuned up and get the oil change and make sure everything is good with that. But we skip over our mental health and doing check-ins for that, self-assessments, going to get assessments. So I think when it comes to mental health and it mattering, because it keeps us balanced to have overall well-being, and we can't skip out on the mental health portion. And I think it's important to speak about it, to talk more about it. And I think it starts in the home. I think everybody in here could possibly know how to finish this. What goes on in the house stays in the house. So it starts there. So how are you going to be able to treat yourself and also get treatment and maintain your mental health if you don't even believe that it's something that should be discussed? Earlier on in my career, I was doing therapy for children. And I had a child to come up to me and say at a school, she came up to me and she said, Miss Shamir, I want to speak to you, but don't tell my mama. And I said, why I can't tell your mom? She said, she doesn't believe in this. She doesn't want me to do it. She just want me to pray about it. And she just want me to work through it. But I really want to talk to you. I really need to talk to you. But just don't tell my mom. But of course, as a professional and ethically, I cannot do that. I have to have the guardian signature and consent in order to provide treatment. But these are conversations that we need to have because some of our children are struggling with their mental health as far as being bullied, their self-esteem, their weight, how they feel about their self-image, their future planning. Me and Miltanja, we work in the adult unit at Atrium Health, and we have a lot of I say 18 to 22, 25-year olds that are coming in because they don't know what their next steps are in life and they're stressed out and they don't know where to turn. And a lot of times they kind of show up in the emergency room because they've kind of had a breakdown of feelings and possible outbursts and they were not able to control their emotions. So I think it's important to have the conversation and overall make sure that you're well and not just in one aspect.
I like to piggyback off of that. Yeah, we do work in the adult department, but I always say we get the big kids because our work
Yes.
is healing the inner child. We're just healing that little person inside of you at a later date. So if we can start earlier on introducing mental health, telling our children that it's okay to not be okay. Let's not be perfect. Let's be self-compassionate. No, you didn't get it right this time, but you can keep trying. And if you're still struggling with that, it's okay, right? So practicing self-compassion but not perfection, because we do get a lot of older adults who are just starting the work, when if we can start earlier it might be a little easier later on. And so Shamir, thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thank
I'm
you.
so glad we got to bring attention to it and share more awareness about why mental health matters. I think we got time for some questions. If anybody has questions from the audience, we'll be answering questions.
First thing we need to do, especially as men, we have a tendency to hold things in, talk with our buddies, drink 15 beers a night, and try to work through it. But that doesn't always work out. So we're going to face some things in life that we just can't get over. It could be a divorce, it could be disability, it could be a loss of a relative. So there's nothing wrong with going to a professional, and I don't care if they're black, white, green, or purple, as long as they're a professional and they know what they're talking about. I went through a rough situation about 2 years ago, and I did go to an African American female, my primary care physician, and I told her I was at a very rough time, and she prescribed a drug for me called Zoloft. Within 3 weeks, I was breakdancing. That's the honest to God, I could jump over a building. So don't be bashful about these drugs. I was only on it for a month. I've never felt better. So there's nothing to be embarrassed about, to admit that you have the problem and that you might need some therapeutic intervention.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank
Thank you for sharing. I think that is a good conversation. I love to open up spaces for my black men and men in general. Sometimes I feel like intimidated, like I don't know how to help. I don't know how to help. But some of my best compliments have come from the black community of just how listening was effective. And the topic of medications. We're not prescribers, but any thoughts on medications?
Well, first, I want to say thank you for saying that because I think that needs to be a subject that we have more often. You just reminded me of one of my clients. He was a black male. He came in for the first time for an assessment, and I went out to the lobby to get him, and he had on a hat, a coat, a scarf, shades, a scarf. I mean, he had on everything. And he was just so discreet. He did not want to, I'm like, you want to take your shades off and, we can have some eye contact and have some dialogue. Take your coat off, feel comfortable. No way. By the fourth session, he came in, he didn't have his hat on, he didn't have his glasses on, he felt comfortable. It's about building that relationship. So I'm glad that you talked about that because that needs to be talked about more. As far as the medication, yes, we do not prescribe medication. However, I am not necessarily against medication. I'm not one of those people who tell my clients day one, you need medication, right?
If you had a sorry, Shamir, if you had a headache, you take some Tylenol, though, right?
Right. You would do that. But sometimes some of the symptoms are so severe or so intense to begin with, or maybe just throughout, that medication may be something that needs to be added to the regimen.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't have a question per se, but just kind of want to go back to when you all were talking about how mental health and like physical symptoms. There were a time in my life in which I was experiencing severe symptoms which looked like PMS syndrome. And it was like clinically, it looked that way. Me as a therapist, I would have diagnosed somebody walking in my office as that. It wasn't until I had some breast discharge then I end up going to the doctor. I'm gonna say the second time because I did leave out that I did go to my OBGYN. She prescribed some Prozac. That did not do me any good. But the reason it didn't do me any good because truly I didn't have PMS. When I went to my primary care after I was having some breast discharge, did some tests, MRI, and it came to be a pituitary tumor. But again, that kind of goes back into how physical symptoms or symptoms can really mimic something else, but it may not even be that. And to as I have to say, if I didn't have that physical symptom, to be honest, I'm not sure if I would have really been diagnosed. So just, pay attention to your body, look at everything, ask a lot of questions because we never know. And so, again, I do want to say thank you all for listening, for you ladies for being up there.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's just our
And we have-
reminder again. The physical and the mental are in sync. So, whether it's checking for the physical symptoms and it being something mentally related or vice versa.
I just wanted to know, are you finding a lot more, people with mental illnesses, around at this time, more homeless people that have mental illnesses and more people just, murdering is always, every time every morning and every night, there's always murder, and it's just so much crime. So are you finding that in your practices and all that you have to counsel more and more people, with that have mental illnesses?
In my answer, I'll say I think it's becoming more and more prevalent. I think we're calling more attention to it. It's becoming more and more of a conversation. I don't know that it's new or that it hasn't always been around, but I think it's always been there, and we just are now paying more attention to the mental health aspect of crime.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Miltanja. However, I think that we've had some worldly things that has happened, like COVID. COVID was one of the things that we saw a major increase in mental health diagnosis. For example, depression, anxiety, because we didn't have those outlets that we had before. Also, when you say around this time, it could be real heavy around the holiday time because this is when you're usually with family, you're remembering lost loved ones. So this could be a real time where mental health issues and symptoms can be prevalent. Absolutely.
I would also add to that, if specifically with homelessness, if I'm homeless and I'm hungry, I can't worry about how I feel.
And it's cold.
I can't focus on it, right? Mm-hmm. So if people's basic needs aren't being met, I don't think we have the space to do the work that we do until those basic needs are being met. So housing resources and food pantries, things like that have to be kind of considered too before we can absolutely effectively do what we do.
Is there a baseline that average people have to where you can say, you're just sad today, and it's not necessarily depression? Is that just something that, in general, if your depression lasts for 3 or 4 days, maybe you're sad, but if it's a situation to where it's a week, it's a month, it's 2 weeks, you really don't want to work, you don't want to talk to people. No, when do you
Right.
know it's time?
I think that I always tell people we have to stop saying depressed, right? Because depression is a clinical diagnosis, but we use that word loosely from day to day. I can hear, oh, I'm depressed. Are you? Or did you just have a bad day? Are you having a bad week? Did something happen to trigger those emotions? So when you are clinically diagnosed with depression, there is a timeline. It could be anywhere, depending on the diagnosis, anywhere between 2 weeks, 30 days, or sometimes we have a year to say you fit the category for this diagnosis. However, depression is used very loosely, but it is possible that you may be having a bad day, bad week. That's why it's important for you to get assessed. That's why it's important for you to have that evaluation and talk to someone who is trained in order to determine whether it's depression or if I'm just having a bad day and I need help.
To add to that, I think we also, when diagnosing, we also look at what's impacted by your bad day. So have you gone to work and your performance has decreased? Your kids, have they not been interactive or you haven't been interactive with them? Anything that has changed in your life. We have to look at all of those social factors to determine too, in addition to the time left before we say, oh yeah, this is clinical depression versus you just really had a bad day, which we all have. I think sometimes we we get looked at as we don't get to have bad days
Oh,
because
yeah, we do.
we are the therapists. I have bad days. I feel sad. And so that timeline, in addition to occupational factors, social factors, all those things that could be impaired have to be assessed too. So like she said, it's very important to get the assessment, even if you do nothing with it, just
to know.
just starting. So I think that's a great way to start that conversation.
I think just to kind of wrap that up to say, is your daily functioning affected by the depression?
I think we have one more question.
All right. Thank you, ladies, for outstanding. Can we give them another hand? They have been excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. My question is, back in the day, there was a trend for our younger gentlemen, young men. They would put them on Ritalin immediately. So my question is, are you all seeing that trend again? Where a lot of times, with our parents, they was like, no, they need a good butt whooping, before they put them on medicine. Because I was a school nurse, and a lot of kids for African American would be on Ritalin, and they were not able to behave properly in class unless they had their medication.
I think to answer that question, I've seen an increase in ADHD diagnosis. So a lot of behaviors, oh, he bad, he bad. But I think he's not able to focus. He is hyperactive. He can't sit still, or he has these thoughts that he just wants to get up and move. So I've seen an increase in diagnosing ADHD, not necessarily a Ritalin prescription, but other more up-to-date medications to treat ADHD and diagnosis like that.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. With ADHD, you have to be careful because I know a lot of people from the past have said, oh, they just slap that label on you and it goes into adulthood. If you have ADHD, it's not something that's just going to end when you turn 21, for example. But that's why it's important to get that evaluation and that treatment, because medication may be what you need, but also it just you need some interventions and different type of skills, because there's different modifiers. You have severe, profound, minor, moderate ADHD. So it just depends on what you need. But sometimes when they come to us and they have like severe or profound ADHD, they can't sit in order to complete the session. They can't sit in order to learn the tools that they need to address the ADHD. So medication is needed first so they can actually absorb the information.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for this discussion, but we thank you for
Thank you.
sitting in with us and having this conversation. Thank you.
Yes.